since the Ayn Sof is what we call pashut, is not made up of anything. It's a simple oneness. That means that the light which shines off of it is a reflection of it. And how do you, what comes out of a simple oneness when you try to bring it to revelation is an infinite attempt to try to explain the unexplainable. And therefore the reflection of light which is trying to reveal the Ayn Sof goes on forever. And this is the nature of the Ayn Sof Shalamata Mata that goes down below, that it has infinite spheros and infinite types of spheros in ways that are unimaginable, because essentially everything and everything will have to try to come out to express the unexpressible. Remember we said from yesterday. So we gave an analogy. If it's true that the Ayn Sof is one and simple, then the thing which is expressing it, why does it have so many, right? It's infinite in kind and in number. So we said, like the analogy that he brings from the candle, that even though you look at the candle, the rays go into every side and every corner of the room, and so there's an infinite type of expression into every little detail, but when you look back at the source of it all comes from one little candle. In other words, for this, it's the reason that we just said, something which is truly one, its expression, or its attempt to express it, is infinite. So then we said that the infinity remains even after the light goes through a tzimtzum. You remember? That after Hashem contracts the light and he brings back the kav, since the kav is still essentially part of that Ayn Sof, that it still retains its nature from that original light, even though it filters itself now through the tzimtzum, the power of limitation, and therefore it comes out as 10 spheros instead of infinite spheros. Even in those 10 spheros, you can still see the infinite nature. Why? Because the 10 spheros go on to be the source of infinite numbers of worlds made out of 10 spheros, right? And even if you're going to get down to like the most finite level of the Ayn Sof, which precedes creation, which we said is Malchus of Atzilus, it's still in the realm of infinite godly light, so it creates a Briya. So then the Briya itself, the actual creation itself, is also of an infinite nature. And no matter how low you get into the Briya, you investigate deeply enough, you're going to find that it's infinite. Like, you can't count the number of things even in the physical world. And that's all because the Ayn Sof, this infinite level of light, is lamata mata ad ein tachlis. It just goes everywhere, and its presence can be found no matter how low you go. Yeah.
So when you're saying all this, you're saying the or, but you're also talking about just an infinite amount of light.
Life and light is very similar. I mean, it's basically the same thing. Yeah. So that was yesterday's class. We'll go on today to Yud Gimel, where we're saying, yeah, we'll just begin. You ready? Here, I'll help you out with that. Okay, v'hine, ma she'omer lamata ad ein tachlis. This that it says, it goes infinitely low. Everyone has a copy? Kai al hagiloi v'spashtus. It refers to the revelation and the expression, as we said, the extension. Shu b'chinas ispashtus b'chinas Ayn Sof. And as we said, it expresses itself and finds itself at an infinite level of expression. Ve'ein shiur, no limitation, ubli gavul mamish, absolutely without end, ad lamata mata, all the way down to the very lowest places. V'medregas hayoser acharonos v'yoser tachtonos. And as we said just a moment ago, we find this expression and this imprint of infinity even in the lowest of places. V'zeu Ayn Sof lamata ad ein tachlis dispashtusei, dispashtus haor hu b'chinas Ayn Sof ubli gavul klal. And that's what it means when we say the Ayn Sof is lamata ad ein tachlis, that its expression, its extension of the light is Ayn Sof and unending, with no end. Ad madriga yoser mata mata, until the ultimately lowest level. It's a little bit repetitive there, it seems. Dihine olamos ha'Ayn Sof, because the worlds of the Ayn Sof shlifnei hatzimtzum. Alright, so he's making a distinction here called the worlds of Ayn Sof, which are before the tzimtzum, right? As we said, that the worlds of the Ayn Sof, there's infinite numbers of worlds that come into existence even before the tzimtzum happens, right? So they're called olamos ha'Ayn Sof, as opposed to the olamos of creation. Olamos ha'Ayn Sof is what's called before the tzimtzum. But olam atzilus, the sham meira or Ayn Sof begiloi. it all goes down. It says that Atzilus itself is called Sof Olamos Ha'Ain Sof. So really the beginning of the created world, something which is no longer the infinite world, starts in Briya. And already Atzilus still maintains some kind of a name tag called the worlds of the Ain Sof, because godliness is revealed there in an open way. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, when you say it in Hebrew, it sounds like a total paradox, right?
Why is
Can you
that?
say it in Hebrew again? The of the Ain Sof, the worlds of the Ain Sof.
Olamos Ha'Ain Sof,
So
Shlifnei
the
Atzimtzum.
worlds, it's like there's a fixed point on Ain Sof. You know what I mean? Like it begins there.
What is it tough for?
There's a beginning, but there's no end.
It's never ending.
Right, but there's beginning, right? Ain Sof means there's no end, but a beginning there is. So in other words, there is a concept that...
Didn't you say it begins at the end of Ain Sof?
No, that was
Oh, I see what you're saying. There is sort of the lowest point of the infinite light, right? So I hear what you're saying there. But the point is why it's still called Ain Sof is because even after the created worlds begin, and what's, okay, so what are we really saying here is that there's two types of worlds. He's calling here before the Tzimtzum and after the Tzimtzum. That itself is a little bit dicey, because I'll explain why. There's the great Tzimtzum, okay, which removes all the Or Ein Sof and leaves the empty place. And then there's the Kav that returns, right? But even the Kav that returns is still called the worlds of the Ein Sof. Because the Kav goes all the way down, the Kav is ultimately going to be found present in some form or another, all the way down to right here. But the presence of the Kav, where you actually see that it's a Kav of Ein Sof, you stop being able to see that it's a Kav of Ein Sof at the world of Atzilus. So from Atzilus and above, they're called Olamos Ha'Ein Sof. From Atzilus and below, they're not called Olamos Ha'Ein Sof, even though they're still Ein Sof, but it's because they could have transformed their presentation that you no longer see them as infinite and divine. But it's good what you're saying. There's no real end there. However, there is an end here, right? There is an end to this whole thing. It's just, I guess, how do you explain it? There was this Greek philosopher, I forget his name, but he says he could never put his hand, he could never, there's an infinite amount of space between him and this wall. Why? Because you can always divide the space in half, right? So I think someone just pushed him into the wall at one point. But the idea is that, no, it was a Greek philosopher. Yeah. But the idea, I forget his name, I'm going way back there, but you remember his name? Anyway, the idea is that it's kind of similar here. There's a beginning to the light, and it appears there's an end to the light. There's a phrase that we say in Tanakh, Kates Sam L'choshech, right? He put an end to darkness, which is ultimately going on the Indian of Geula and so forth, but it also goes on the Indian of somehow, there's something called a Tachtonim, right? Hashem wants a Dira B'Tachtonim, which means he wants a dwelling place in the lowest world. So at some point, it came to an end. It did come to an end, and it's this place, right? But why do we say it's infinite? Because the space in between goes on forever. It's kind of like this. You can always divide the space in half. Somehow, in between the beginning and the end, there's an infinite amount of space in between. It's a little bit hard to fathom that.
If it's not revealed to us, then that's the end, so to speak.
What? I didn't get that part.
The transition from the Or and Sof to where we are, we don't actually see it. So, because it's not in revelation mode.
Yeah.
That's
no longer called the Olamos Ha'Ein Sof, but they're called regular Olamos. Right, so what I was saying now at the end of this conversation was just that there actually is an end to the whole Kav. The Kav stops, right? Like if you look at the diagram of the Arizal, right? First you have the whole place filled with light. Then the light removes and creates a circle of emptiness. Then the Kav comes back and it starts to come down and fill in those worlds, but it goes to the middle of the circle. If you've ever seen it goes to here and it stops, right? Which means there's the Kav at least has a beginning and an end, right? But nonetheless, we call it the every place that the Kav reaches, there's still an expression of infinity. So let's put it like that. Even in this end, this final point, you can go and never come to the end of the number of creatures and things in this world. If you go down certainly to the molecular level and so forth and so on. So there's the Or Ein Sof The quality of infinity is found at every place from top to bottom. Even though there is a bottom, but even in the bottom, you can see the expression of the Ayn Sof there. Yeah.
I was reading Rabbi Label Wolf.
Label? Yeah.
Right,
Shout
he was
out.
talking about the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
A little bit.
You also spoke about the original Simsum, and then like a minor Simsum. Like there's two, right? So where do those? Do you know?
Yeah, the original Tzimtzum is basically the first Tzimtzum that we've been talking about, the emptying out of the light.
In regards to the 5 worlds or 4 worlds?
Everything was emptied out. That's called Tzimtzum number 1. Tzimtzum Arishon. From that point on, as the light comes down, it's fundamentally different. All the Tzimtzumim that take place, there's many, many millions of Tzimtzumim, billions, trillions of Tzimtzumim, uncountable. Because every time you go to another world or another sphera, or another subsection of a sphera, anytime the light descends one drop, it has to contract itself, but it's a very big difference. It minimizes, it does not disappear. So the difference between the first Tzimtzum and all other Tzimtzum is the first Tzimtzum, the light absolutely disappears. It's called a histalkus, and it leaves emptiness. And then the kav returns, and as the kav goes down, every stage of the kav is another Tzimtzum, but it's no longer a Tzimtzum of total removal, it's a Tzimtzum of minimization. That's the difference. That's the two types of tzimtzum. Anyway, so going on. The idea is that the olamos of the Ayn Sof that are before the tzimtzum and the world of Atzilus, there it shines the light of the Ayn Sof Bagiloi. So what we're saying is in those worlds, right? You can, if you happen to be hanging out in those worlds, you'll experience infinity, right? Whereas as soon as it crosses over into the realm of Briya and below, you experience finiteness. The actual light of the Ayn Sof is tucked away inside of vessels, and even though we're saying that it's still found there, but it's not revealed there. Like for example, here everything has a finite edge, right? And yet we're saying if you would go deeply investigating, you'll find that there is no end to the number of things here. You can find the Ayn Sof here, but in those worlds, nothing has a finite edge. The Ayn Sof is revealed in every single place. Right? And what's the story? Harihem kelim le'orein sof. And why is that? Because the actual spheros and the vessels, which are in those worlds, the higher infinite worlds, as opposed to the vessels that are in these worlds, the vessels are so refined, they're like translucent, that the light can find a full expression there. Where these vessels, they're coarser and they're thicker, when the light goes into these vessels, the vessels swallow up the light and hide it. Right? So that's why those worlds reveal the infinity, because the vessels are more refined.
The light takes those vessels down a rabbit hole.
Lios degama kelim harihem elukus mamish. And why is that? Because there, the vessels themselves are also just as godly as the lights. In other words, you basically have two things: light and vessel. Light, as you've been saying repeatedly, is the life, right? It's sort of like the energizing divine force. Light always looks godly. Even when it gets down to this world, it's the soul inside of you, which is the light, which animates everything and looks godly. It's the vessels that can be sort of causing the problem. The vessels down here, they look dead, right? If you don't have, God forbid, light in your vessel, you have a dead body or a dead thing, right? But if you go higher and higher, the vessels themselves, they're not other than God. The vessels themselves are divine entities, right? And so over there, since the vessels themselves are elokus, their divinity, therefore the light of God shines through them in a clear way, and they don't conceal and darken the light. As the vessels go through their own state of hishtalshlus and their own process of lowering themselves, boom, once they hit Briya, the vessels change fundamentally, and they look like something other than God. They look like, that's why it's called the world of creation. At that point, it looks like you have something called the creator and the creation, which is not the creator. And that is because the vessels change their form to becoming something which is, at least in an expressed way, not godly anymore. And so that's the culprit, is these vessels. But in the worlds of the Ayn Sof, the vessels are there still godly, therefore the light shines openly. The Im Kain, I know it's like kind of a heavy-duty amount of information and it's deep, but if you have mamash a question to what I'm saying that's not clear, so you can raise your hand and stop me.
Because at that point, the light and the vessels are non-different, right?
No, they are two different things. They're two different aspects of divinity. There's Hashem's aspect of being finite, Hashem's aspect of being infinite. But even Hashem's aspect of being finite is Him. So that and it's clear that it's Him, and so therefore it doesn't sort of hide and conceal the other part of Him, which is open divinity and infinity. Okay, so Im Kain, and since those vessels are godly up there, Ein Pela Klal, it's no wonder at all Da Ayn Sof Meir Sham Begila, that the light of the infinite shines openly over there. In other words, it's very clear that there's something called the Ayn Sof, that's infinite light, because the vessels don't block it. Yeah.
So when you say Ayn Sof Lamala, is that what you call it?
No, we didn't get to that yet. All this is in the.
And then you have like the 2 points.
Okay, so let me just.
One way, and then you have Lamata.
Yeah, but stop. I gotta stop you. I just gotta clarify our terms, right? There's two parts of the Ayn Sof, and then I'll go with you on this. There's the Ayn Sof Shalamai Lamaila, the Ayn Sof Shalamata Mata. We have not yet discussed the Ayn Sof Shalamai Lamaila. This whole conversation is taking place in the realm of the Ayn Sof that goes infinitely low. It has a top, and it has a bottom. So when I'm talking about the higher worlds of the Ayn Sof, which are openly godly, I'm still talking about the Ayn Sof that goes down. I'm just talking about the higher quadrants of it, as opposed to the lower quadrants of it. Because the Ayn Sof that actually goes up, we haven't discussed it yet. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay, did you have a question based on that, or?
Yeah. So until we reach the threshold, and we get to this realm,
Briya, you're talking about the Briya? Okay.
So now we still see the Ayn Sof, but in a way where it just like goes inwards and keeps going in like forever.
Yeah.
Versus outside of the threshold, outside of Briya, it goes outwards forever.
Okay.
Right? So we get to a certain point.
Okay.
Yeah, something.
I kind of hear where you're going with that. Yeah.
So am I.
I mean, because he didn't use that exact language. I don't want to sign on to it, but I kind of hear what you're saying there. Yeah.
So that means really that Chachma and any of the worlds from here down and this world
Yeah.
don't really contain the Ayn Sof.
No, on the contrary. Ultimately what we're saying is the Ayn Sof is found everywhere. It's just that it's not seen and clear and revealed in the lower worlds, but it's there. And in fact, on the contrary, what holds it in there is the chokhmah of everything. In other words, everything has a chokhmah. Not only every world has a chokhmah. And it's like the essential oil, if you will, the point of chokhmah. So Ayn Sof can actually reside inside of every single creation. The problem is, it's only in the point of chokhmah. So since the chokhmah is dressed in a bina and a chesed and a gevurah, so then you can't see it, and it looks like a finite thing. It's wrapped up in all kinds of garments, but inside of there's actually something that cannot be contained. Yeah, inside of everything. But the point is, once you hit the Briya, it goes into a state of concealment, but doesn't disappear. It's still there. That's the difference between the higher worlds, like we're saying here, the worlds of the Olamos of Ayn Sof, because the vessels are sort of all in a state of Chokhmah. Every vessel, Bina, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, they're all Chokhmah, right? Because they all are so bittul that the real coarseness of the other spheros don't. There's something called, like Chesed shebe Gevurah and Gevurah shebe Chesed, but the spheros are intertwined in this way, right? Not interchangeable. They're all inside of each other. So sometimes you have, let's say, Chokhmah sheba Netzach, let's say. Sometimes you have Netzach sheba Chokhmah. So you could put it like this: all the worlds that are higher, they're all Sheba Chokhmah. In other words, whatever sphera or whatever world you're going to see, it's all really an aspect of Chokhmah. Because it never really comes out of the state that the vessels are clearly and openly showing their source. So even if you're going to say there's infinite worlds, they're all of the sort of Chokhmah where the godliness can be openly revealed. Whereas here, the Chokhmah is inside of the Chesed. So in other words, what shows itself is something which is not chokhmah, i.e. not bittul to the Ayn Sof, but inside of there's a chokhmah where you have that same light, it's just hidden. Clear?
On Speheres Omer, it's always like,
We don't say Chachma.
like chokhmah, Speheres chokhmah.
On Speheres Omer we don't say chokhmah. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it's just not part of the deal over there.
We're just trying to, like the shebet something concept is apparent on Speheres Omer.
Yeah, we say that, yeah. Okay, so going on. So it's no wonder in those higher worlds why the Or Ein Sof is shown itself in a revealed way there. V'kein ein pella. It's also no wonder, here we're like 8 lines down the middle, Ma shehem yecholim lekabel Or Ein Sof hagalui. Why they're able to handle and receive inside of, so to speak, a vessel, which a vessel in theory has edges and so forth, right? How is a vessel able to hold on to and collect the Or Ein Sof, which has no end? He says no wonder there at all as well, because the vessels are godly vessels. They're not normal vessels. It's not like a cup, which is an actual finite thing. It's like a chokhmah type of vessel, as we were saying before. It's a type of divine entity which can contain infinity. It's like the Torah, right? It's a finite number of letters where everything is found inside of there. Or it's like a Moshe Rabbeinu. He's a finite human being that the infinite God speaks through his mouth, right? It's a special type of vessel. So it's no wonder that these types of vessels can hold the Or Ein Sof. Aval olamos bia, but when you get down to the lower world, starting with Briya and Yitzir Nasiya, of course, harihem b'chinas mata. They're called lower worlds. Dekelim datzilus hem kagufa l'nishmasa, ma she'ein kein bia hem b'chinas levushim. Okay, so let me translate and then we'll discuss this. This is a concept that we've dealt with at length in other Maimorim, but we have to deal with it now. It's wonderful. It says like this: the worlds of Atzilus, the vessels of Atzilus, they are like a body to a soul. Not so the vessels of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, the lower 3 worlds, they are like garments.
Can you repeat that?
The vessels of Atzilus are like a body to a soul, whereas the vessels of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, they're like garments on that body.
Like thought, speech, and action?
Like your underwear and your jacket, right? But also thought, speech, and
One is
action,
the
yes.
soul and one is the body itself.
So the idea is that you have this, the idea of what is the body to the soul. The soul in Atzilus is the light. The body is the vessels. But the and the same thing is true when you get down to Briya, Yitzir, and Asiya. The garments are called the vessels. So what's the difference between a body and garments? Quite literally, right? Is that the body is alive when the soul comes into it, right? In a sense, let me just add in this little phrase in there. There's such a thing called garments which reveal, or vessels which reveal, and garments which conceal, right? Garments which are there to reveal something, garments which are there to conceal something. Let me explain this for a second, and we'll move on. Light, okay, has all kinds of properties inside of it, which are in a state of potential. And in fact, the whole idea of revealing the light is because you want to show the properties that are in a potential state inside of that light. For example, a prism. You have all kinds of colors inside of a light, but without the kli, without the garment that the light goes through, you can't actually see what's inside of the light. It stays in a potential state. So therefore, vessels are not all there to conceal. Some vessels are there to reveal, because only when the light hits the vessel that the vessel basically enables the light to show itself. Like for example, you have a soul, and your soul wants to sort of hang out in the physical world. Without a physical body, your soul is not able to reveal itself in a physical world. Right? It could be walking around in this room. There's probably dozens of them walking around in this room. We're in the city of Kabbalah over here. Don't be afraid. But the idea is that nobody can see them. They don't have expression in this dimension because they're lacking a vessel. So some vessels reveal. Some vessels are very positive. They're not there to conceal. They're there to show. But other vessels conceal. And that's the difference between a body and garments. Your body, is, as we just described, is there to enable your soul to actually be seen. It's not even though it wraps itself around your soul, right? But the function and purpose of wrapping itself around your soul is to enable your soul to show itself. Whereas garments, it's the exact opposite. You put garments on your body to hide the body. And then you don't see what the body's all about because these garments are there. Especially if the garments are like a sackcloth and you jump into a bag and it doesn't even show the parts and so forth. There's different levels of garments, right? So the idea is, this is the difference between the vessels of Atzilus versus the vessels of the lower 3 worlds. The vessels of Atzilus, let me just finish and then I'll take questions. The vessels of Atzilus, why are they able to hold godliness and they show the Or Ein Sof as it is, and they're not like troublemakers and hiding the light? Because they're like a body to a soul. They're there. Their whole purpose of being there is to enable the light to actually be seen. So it's no wonder, as he said a couple times, that they allow infinity to come out of them. That's the purpose of them being there, is that so you can see what the Or Ein Sof is. Because if there was no vessels whatsoever, the Or Ein Sof would not able to come down and shine at all. It's like basically the enabler to allow light to shine is that it has to shine into something. Otherwise it'll just stay like sort of tucked away and won't show itself at all. So when it finally does shine into these types of vessels, it's no wonder that these vessels enable the light to stay in an infinite state, revealed, because that's the whole purpose of them. Whereas when you get down to the lower realms of Briya, Yitzir and Asiyah, those are like garments that you throw on top of the body, and therefore it's no wonder that they hide the light and don't allow the infinite nature of the light to be seen. They're a different type of vessel.
What makes those vessels, what the candidates of holding the light? Like, what makes them strong enough to hold the light?
Just a divine sort of measuring stick that decided how did your skin molecules get the schus of being part of a body, and your pants only lost out and they only get to be part of a garment, right? It's kind of luck. I mean, Hashem chose these elements to be this type of vessel and these elements to be this type of vessel, right?
But they burst in the past, right? Like vessels that burst.
Now you're talking about bursting vessels. I mean, let's keep one topic at a time. That's another like sort of issue. Yeah. And all right, now that you piqued my curiosity, the idea of bursting vessels is that you have vessels which refuse to do their job of enabling the light to be seen. Hashem's like, here, I'll take a vessel, and again, as we've just described, the vessel's job is to enable the light to be seen. These vessels were not able to enable the light to be seen, so the light went back to its hiding place, the vessels broke. That's the idea of tohu and so forth. All right. Is everyone still here?
Maybe.
In this dimension?
I'm here.
All right. So, going on. So you don't have a question anymore?
No, you answered it.
Okay. Mashein ken biya. Okay. And v'kamuvu b'Pesach Eliyahu. And all this is explained. This topic of garments and body is explained in the Maimer Pesach Eliyahu, which is we say it on Erev Shabbos, but it's basically the opening of Eliyahu Hanavi to describe the spheros and everything. It's pretty powerful stuff. And he says over there, quote, Kama levushin takinas lon, you fashioned many garments, dekai al biyah, and it refers over there to the lower three worlds. You made many garments to cover this body, and the garments to cover the body are referring to, right, the worlds of Briya, Yitzir, and Asiyah, the lower type of garments. Shemrak levushim bilvad, they're mere garments, leor hakelim datzilus, to the light of the vessels of Atzilus, where the vessels of Atzilus, shehem bechinas gufa, they're the body. Kanal hamislavish behem, as we said. So in other words, he's just saying that this is all brought out very clearly in Pesach Eliyahu. He explains mamish. You made garments for the body. The body he already described. Chesed is the right arm. Gevurah is the left arm. He goes into a whole explanation over there, explaining how the spheres are like a body, and then he says you made many garments for this body, and he's pasha describing the difference between the vessels of Atzilus and the vessels of Briya, Yitzir, and Asiyah. Looks like sort of just Kabbalistic poetic language. It's mamish detailed instructions of what's going on up there. B'kamaimer, and as it says, Eima ilah mikanana b'korsaya. It says that the higher mother nests in the throne. What does it mean? Again, poetic language.
The higher mother rests.
The higher mother rests in the throne. The Eima ilah, what is it referred to? Bechinas bina datzilus. The Eima ilah, the higher mother, of course, is bina. Chochma and bina is the father and the mother. So bina of Atzilus is called the mother. Harihu mekanana knana bekorsaya, and it rests in what we call the throne, the chair, which is olam hakise, the world called the chair, which is olam habriya. It refers to Briya. Let me just continue this line and I'll explain the whole thing. Then it goes on and says, Shish Sfiran Biyitzira, the 6 spheros, which is below that mother of Bina, which is the 6 spheros from Chesed to Yesod, right? That's called Za. That dwells It nests in Yetzira. V'ofan ba'asiya. And the wheel, right, which the wheel refers to Malchus of Atzilus, yeah?
I think it's time for the blackboard.
It could be, if someone wants to get the blackboard, that's fine. The wheel, the wheel is basically represents Malchus of Atzilus.
What wheel are we talking about?
We're talking about, essentially, it's a chariot, right?
Or chariot?
So we're describing the chariot, right? The man sits on the chariot.
So the man is Atzilus.
The man is Atzilus, right? The chair of the man, the throne, which is sitting in the chariot, is Briya.
Yeah.
The 6 spheres, which is basically the actual chariot itself, right? That's in Yetzira. And the wheel, which touches the ground, is in Asiya. Is Malchus, which is in Asiya. So let me explain what's going on here, right? All this is taking place. What he's describing is the 4 quadrants of the world of Atzilus itself. This is not really totally new. We just sort of described this. He's describing it again in a different format, but it should be somewhat understandable to us, right? He's describing the 4 quadrants of the world of Atzilus.
And the man is the Chokhmah?
The man is Chokhmah, right? So, as we know, there's 4 quadrants in every world, right? The world of Atzilus, and that is Chokhmah, Bina, Za, which is the 6 spheros, and then Malchus. And refers to Yud K Vav K, right? So it's like really every set of 10 spheros is essentially just Hashem's name, right? All right, that being said, there's a big difference between each one of those quadrants in the manner of how much godliness can dwell and rest inside of there. So the Yud is the first letter. It represents Chokhmah, as we were just describing a moment ago. Chokhmah is this unique Kli, where even though it's a vessel, it lets godliness completely flow through it. It's like that's really the Indian of like the body to the soul that we were just talking about, right? It is there merely to reveal God, in no way to conceal God. That's the Yud, right? And the idea of the Yud is, as we've said in the previous parts of this mimer, like it's the most smallest letter. It's a bittul. It's a total self-effacement. It gets out of the way entirely. It has no private existence, thus enabling the true existence of God to flow through it. And that's the first letter. So that represents the man on the chariot, and that's therefore the world of Atzilus, because the whole of Atzilus, the entirety of Atzilus, has that quality. Because there's also 4 worlds. Just like there's 4 quadrants inside of the world of Atzilus, there's also 4 worlds. So the Yud, which is in Atzilus itself, the most refined sphera, it also, that Yud resides in some form or another in the entire world of Atzilus. So the Chokhmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Malchus, and Yisod, and all the spheros, Yisod and Malchus, they all are residing at the level of Yud in Atzilus, because it's the first world. Like the whole of Atzilus is a Yud. So even though you have other spheros there, they're all Yud spheros. That's what I was saying a moment ago. It's like something Sheba Chokhmah. You with me there? Now, go to Bina. Right? Go down, you're now back in Atzilus, and you go to, it's Hey, you go to Bina of Atzilus. Now even though Bina of Atzilus has the quality of Atzilus, as we just mentioned, it's got the Yud quality, but you can't compare Bina of Atzilus with Chokhmah of Atzilus, right? So even though in general, Bina of Atzilus is doing pretty good for itself, it's a total bittul, because it has the aspect of that Yud, but it is Bina after all, it's not Chokhmah. And therefore what winds up happening is that the influence of Bina of Atzilus, it is the Hey, its influence, it resides throughout the entire world of Briya. Just like the Yud, its influence is felt in the entire world of Atzilus, the Hey of Atzilus, which is Bina, it governs the experience of the whole world of Briya, which is one world down. Did you understand what I'm saying at all? Well, let's get the board, I think. You want to get the board?
Come on, David.
All right, I'll get the board.
Alright. Really move right now. Got a very bad back.
The board's not in here. Oh,
I know.
Carry the board. It's going to make it even harder.
here, do we have a marker?
Barely even sit right now.
Do we have a marker anywhere?
Oh, I saw a marker by the T station.
Yeah,
We have a marker.
wow.
There's the marker.
Rabbi, so
I also need the better chair for this. Who has the chair for this? No, I need that special chair.
The one behind us.
okay.
Here, you know it's right over there.
Eat special K and Wheaties. Trusted name.
Come on, people, we can do this.
Any other marker over there?
Did you contact
It should be on the bookshelf.
It's not though.
There's another black one. Where's the other marker?
black?
Can you find the other marker?
On this?
Come on.
It's gonna take you days to get back.
All right.
And we're back.
Then you have.
Yeah, we did it with the whole board last time.
Right? You see what's going on here? You have Atzilus, Briya, Tzir, and Asiya. Everyone sees that?
I see it, so
Okay. Alright, but you get the point. Then what's going on is in Atzilus itself, you have these four quadrants. Okay? Which is basically Yud K Vav K. Or Chokhmah, Bina, the six spheros, and Malchus. So all we're saying is something very simple. Just like you have 1, 2, 3, 4, you also have 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So this is a microcosm, so to speak, of this macrocosm.
Oh, isn't the fourth Asiya?
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
This is 1.
Yeah, one, big, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, something's boring.
2, 3, 4. Okay? So this is basically the microcosm, and this is the macrocosm. So inside of Atzilus, you really have all the four worlds, is what we're saying. You have Atzilus, Briya, Yetzir, and Asiya inside of Atzilus, right? The thing is that it's not quite like that, because inside of Atzilus, everything is totally nullified to God. So Asiya of Atzilus is Atzilus-like. It's not Asiya-like. And that's what I was saying before. Everything is Sheba Chokhmah, right? In other words, even though you have other spheros here, they're all residing at the level of, what's that?
Yeah.
You want me to do something?
No, it's just that would be like the gateway, right? To like a never-ending.
Oh, hold on. Let me just finish what I'm saying. I thought you were going with some movie directions over there. So everything that resides in this world has the quality of really the Yud, right? This Chokhmah. Why? Because number one really resides in the whole world. Number one Sphira takes over the whole energy of number one world. And therefore there's other spheros, but they all reside essentially at the level of Chokhmah.
Wait, so the
understand
life
that?
force of number two is from number.
So what's going to happen over here is that Bina is going to be responsible
So this one.
for this one. That's not such a good scene there,
Yeah.
but, right? Bina, therefore, of Atzilus, the quality of what Bina of Atzilus is, it is ultimately governing the entire energy of Briya.
It's like the boss of that.
Yeah, it's in other words, whatever Bina really is, and again, Bina in Atzilus, Bina is Chokhmah-like.
Wow.
But it's only because the power of Chokhmah is so overwhelming, it makes all the spheros of Atzilus Chokhmah-like. But if you would sort of get Bina on its own, it's nothing like Chokhmah. Bina is almost an opposite of Chokhmah,
Right,
because
life
Bina is not the concept of a body to a soul. Bina is already like a concealing type of garment, which Bina has a feeling of self and yesh and independence. So while it's in Atzilus, all of that is nullified to the Chokhmah of Atzilus. But the world of Briya is a product of Bina, and when it winds up coming out on its own, it's like there's a iron wall over here separating the experience of the Yud, which resides in Atzilus, to that of the Hey, or Bina, which resides in Briya. And that's what he says, that the higher mother resides in the throne. This world of Briya is called the throne, and this higher mother nests in the throne. It gives its hold basically to all the spheres of Briya, therefore, they all have the quality of Bina. So even though there's Chesed and Gevur and Tiferes of Briya, they're all Bina-dik, right? And then it goes on like that. Number 3 goes down to Yetzirah. That's what it says. The 6 spheros, they reside in Yetzirah. It says. And then this is called the wheel because it sort of touches the ground, and it says it resides in Asiya. So basically, Atzilus itself and the little nuances of Atzilus, they wind up distributing the light, each one from their level, to the four worlds. And now let's go back to our basic point. We're trying to say this is the difference between the higher worlds and the lower worlds. As I said earlier, the higher worlds in general, even though there's different levels of them, because they're all coming from a chokhmah type of status, they obviously reveal the Or Ein Sof openly. Because just like the Yud, it's a body for a soul. It's there to show and reveal the Or Ein Sof without getting in the way. So all the higher worlds basically have that function. Whereas once you go across this iron boundary over here, all these worlds conceal the Or Ein Sof in some way. Again, back to our point, the Or Ein Sof is still in there. Because these worlds are also infinite, and there's an infinite number of them. But the nature of each world is that you don't see the infinite, you see the finite, you see the garments, you see the concealing factor, and the infinite domain is sort of hiding in there if you look deeply enough. You can like eke it out, so to speak.
So in Bina, so is the predominating, like, the factor that's strongest, is it Bina Bina or Bina Yud? How does it start?
What? Even the Chokhmah of Bina is Bina-dik.
Okay.
I mean, even the Chokhmah of Briya is a Bina type of Chokhmah. It's not the same level of Chokhmah. Right? Because the whole world of Briya is affected and influenced by the higher mother.
So basically our wisdom is even lower than speech?
Our wisdom is lower than the speech of Hashem for sure.
Yeah.
Our wisdom is lower than the heels of Hashem.
You can't even understand, like.
Exactly. We're not in the game, basically. But the beauty of it, the way Hashem set up the system, is that somewhere in here is also Pashat the Or Ein Sof. And here comes Torah and mitzvahs. That's what Torah and mitzvahs does. It basically is the kli which goes to the Pashat Panemius of every single world and is able to access the Or Ein Sof inside of this place. So the same Mamash Chochmah Batzilus somehow is harnessed and comes out when you do a mitzvah. That's what mitzvahs is not from this world. Right?
Are we accessing Or Ein Sof right now?
Yes, we are. In a very deep way. Especially when you get the board going. All right, I guess we'll... no, we have time. Let's keep going a little bit. I'm putting this away.
It's
All right.
extremely helpful.
Maybe we'll bring it back.
Extremely amazing.
Back.
I don't think
All
I've
right.
ever comprehended it like that before.
You got it?
Yeah.
All right, so... Going on. L'chein. We have a few minutes. L'chein nikra biya mata. Right, we're about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up from the bottom towards the end of the line. L'chein nikra biya mata. That's why the biya, the lower worlds of Briya, Tzir, Nasir, are called lower. L'fi shehem rak levushim l'or atzilus, because they're merely garments to the light of atzilus. But levushim de biya, right, from these garments of Briya, Tzir, Nasir, these lower level conciliatory worlds, Omer, it says in Pesach Eliyahu, Deminahu parchen nishmasim libnei nasha. It says, from them come out souls of man. So think about that. The soul, which shehem neshamos, that's the soul of a Jew, even. So the soul of, even the soul of a Jew, forgetting about our body, the soul of a Jew is already from the level of the garments of Hashem. So what's the soul is normally called the light, right? Like the life force. So our life force of our souls, again, not necessarily the peak root of the souls, but like this, where the souls actually come out and they're like, hi, I'm a soul. At that level of somewhat independence, that each soul has its own place, its real origin is merely in the garments of Hashem, not in his actual body. You follow that? You notice, in the world of Briya, which is merely a garment, it's already basically something which blocks the true light of Hashem's infinity. That's the place where the souls are sprung from. No, it's in Briya, or below.
Briya is like a garment for Hashem?
Yeah, we just said that, right?
For Hashem?
Atzilus is the body of Hashem, so to speak. The vessels of Atzilus is the body of Hashem, and the Briya, Tzir, and Asiya are like the garments of Hashem. Right? And so a garment, it's not even mamish the thing. Like, what is a garment? It's like a separate entity, which is not the man himself. That's where the souls of the Yidden come from. Except for a rare breed, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe, they come from Atzilus. There's such a thing as called Neshama Atzilus. We just had in a Yom Yom or something the other day. I think it was a Yom Yom.
Yes, sir.
That he said...
Enoch and...
No, I think he was talking about the Berdichever, right? No. He was like afraid... Zusha of Anapoli, he saw the Alter Rebbe coming, and he said, and he got scared. He said, "Here comes the soul of Atzilus." Yeah.
You can see that stuff.
He could see that stuff. Anyway, Dine Rov HaNeshamas, because most of the souls, Hen Neshamas, the Biyah, they're really souls of Briya Tzir Nasiya. They're not souls of Atzilus. Rak Chad B'dara, B'daras HaRishonim, just one generation, in the early generations, Hem Neshamas Datzilus, they were the souls of Atzilus. Talk about that like a soul of Atzilus. It's mamish like literally, it's the Ayn Sof hanging around in the finite world. That's the Alter Rebbe, right? And his Mali Makomo, all the people that filled his place, the Rebbeim. Aval Rov Neshamas, but most of the souls, they're Neshamas Debiyah. They're souls whose origin already comes from the garments of Hashem, Briya Tzir Nasiya. Which means like even our soul is already in a place where it's basically a constricting, limiting factor of godliness. It's not like the worlds of Ayn Sof who openly show God. Even our soul. Gufa. However, when it comes to the Briya Tzir Nasiya themselves, okay, so now we're going to get into another little breakdown. That now we're in the garments, the lower worlds. In those worlds themselves, there's different levels of those lower worlds. And in general, there's what we call the Panemius and the Chitzonius. The inner aspect of those worlds and the external aspects of those worlds. I.e., the light and the vessels of those worlds. So what we're saying is even the light of those worlds is already garment-like, right? But nonetheless, at least it's light. Because you can only imagine what the vessels which conceal that light, they're 100% garment-like. So he's saying that, let me just finish this one point, he's saying that even though our souls come from Briya Tzir Nasiya, which is the garment-like aspect, nonetheless the souls come from the Panemius. We come from the innermost dimension of those worlds, which means that we're at least the light of those worlds, as opposed to the vessels. And the Malachim, the angels, are the Chitzonius. They're the external aspects of those worlds. Va'olamos hem chitzonius dichitzonius. And so to speak, the world aspect of those worlds, that it like produces like some kind of a universe, those are the external of the external aspect of those worlds.
The universe?
In other words, each world, including this one, it has souls, angels, and world. Right? In other words, there's different agents at work, which are basically...
So you can try with like...
Yeah, in other words, you could look at it, for example, like human, animal, and plant and vegetable. In other words, like the plant vegetable is just sort of like the world. Then you have sort of like these animals, which are sort of like the life of the worlds, making the world interact with each other. The bees to the flowers, like they sort of are like the systems of the worlds. And then you have the souls, which is like the panemius purpose of those worlds. Those worlds aren't just sitting there; they're there so the soul can go do something with them. So you have that all the way up. Every world has its neshama, its malach, which is like the animals, and the actual world, which is sort of just like this place where it all goes down. So those are different levels of those worlds. So the panemius, the most inner aspect of the higher worlds, that's the soul of every world. And basically that's the presence of the Jewish soul in all of these places. Our soul basically is connected with the language of Leibel Wolf I heard 15 years ago. It's like an umbilical cord connecting us from here all the way to the Ayn Sof. So our soul has a presence in every single world until it connects itself down here and goes into our body. So at that, wherever it is residing in any of those worlds, it's the soul, the innermost light of those worlds. And then something's wrapped around it to sort of conceal it, or to enable to express itself, either way you want to look at what the vessel is there for. And that's the angels and the world. So as I was saying to you at the end of yesterday's class, that really angels and world, they're really just a factor and a function of the soul of the world. It's like they're like the clothing and the activities of the panemius life force of each world. So if you think about what a yid is, the neshama of a yid, every single thing in creation is an expression of him, because he's the panemius of the world. So what goes on with a yid, even though we're just so small of a number, you can actually see this, like by watching the newspaper, right? What goes on with the yid has an immediate effect on the entire creation. And by the way, not just this creation, but all infinite worlds. Because he's the panemius sort of inner life force of reality, then what goes on with him, everything else is just an extension thereby of what goes on with him. So that's what he's saying. In conclusion, and then we'll answer your question, if you still have, remember. In conclusion, what we're saying is that even though the neshamas of the worlds of Briya Tzir Nasiya are only garments as opposed to the body of Atzilus, and that's where our souls come out of. Nonetheless, our souls are at least the innermost dimension of those garments, which is, so to speak, the light of those worlds, as opposed to the vessel or even the external aspects of the vessel.
The life force?
The light of those worlds, as opposed to there's light in vessel.
Is our souls.
Is the neshamas of the Jewish people, yeah. It's deep, can I tell you?
Are we in the Siyah? We're in the lowest part of the Siyah, right?
Yeah. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? Okay. All right, we'll hold here. Shkoyach.
The soul comes from the garments.